All right, Coach, welcome back to the podcast. This one, obviously, after a big win at home, GLVC opener, and your 100th career win. How's it feel to come back and get the big win?
Well, it was, first of all, it's just great to get a first conference win, and first conference game of our new conference, and so to start off with a win's great. Anytime you get that at home, we'll celebrate that, be excited about that, and so felt good about it, and and as far as the 100th win, I mean, you just coaches don't do that without great players and great coaches that I've had through the years. I mean, it's I always say head coaches get too much credit and too much blame. It goes both ways, and so yes, great milestone. But man, I just think back through my coaching career, just the outstanding coaches I've had, and they've recruited great players, and so we've been blessed to reach that. But hopefully we start a new era here at Lindenwood.
It's kind of a cliche question because I kind of know what the answer is. But when you first started your coaching career, did you ever think you could reach 100 wins?
No, you never even think about it. The irony of it, and I didn't realize this till one of my former coaches texted me on Sunday and congratulated me, but said, "Hey, you know what's unique about this, your 100th win?" And I was thinking, I'm like, no, I was trying to think of what he meant, and so my very first game was against William Jewell, and so to get my 100th win against William, I never thought about it. I remember it, I just never even thought about that, and so the irony of that was kind of cool too.
Super cool. Well, obviously, let's go back to Saturday. William Jewell comes to town. First half, we'll say the team has been kind of slow in the first half and kind of getting going on offense especially. It was a total different situation where the offense came to play early. You got a 69-yard touchdown grab by Henneman right away in the first drive. You guys just set the tone early. What can you tell me about the first half start?
Well, I always say you achieve what you emphasize. In the week, with back-to-back first two games not starting fast, we emphasized that in practice. I mean, we changed our practice schedule around to start a competition period right off the bat, right after stretch, to get them going and kind of having that mindset with the competition between the O&D and emphasize that Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday a little bit. But for the most part, we just hammered that start fast mentality, and getting these guys to understand that they're a very good football team, and if they come out and not have to play from behind and set a tone, and they really that resonated, and both sides. Defense was on the field first. They get a 3-and-out or get them to punt and right away, and then we go down and score. And special teams started off very well too, and that's kind of how you want it to go. So obviously we got to do the second part now.
Right, understand.
The finish part, yeah.
Well, let's go to the second half. I mean, a slow start offensively, and you guys get shut out technically in the second half. The defense, after giving up a couple touchdowns, buckled down and did the same thing they did in the first half. And the key is you guys got the victory. So tell me about the differences you saw from the first half to the second half.
Well, first of all, you got to credit William Jewell. I mean, it's like we told them, they had a lead, put 21 points on West Texas A&M, and the week before that, and which West Texas is a very good program, and so we try to convince them and make them understand, hey, this is a team that can put points on the board. And so, I think that's the $1 million question in coaching is how do you, number one, how do you bring back momentum? Once it leaves you, how do you get it back? I mean, obviously big plays, but disciplining your team to be disciplined to come out and start a second half like with a lead. I think, that's been one of those things. I think about all those games I've coached and how many times even different places, different teams I've had where you have a lead and you come out in the second half and all of a sudden, it's like, okay, are we gonna pick up where we left off or to get the motor going? And so, so I give Jewell the credit there, but offensively, we had in the second half, we had a penalty or a miscue or a turnover at one of those three things in every drive of the second half.
Right.
And so when you get a good big play and you get a 15-yard penalty because of a illegal block or a hold, and it goes back and now you're behind the sticks, first and 20 or 25, or second and 25, that probably that's good chance that drive's going to stall. So a lot of self-inflicted wounds there, in the second half offensively, and a lot of that's just focus. Again, okay, we got the lead. I think they're going to go away. wins the game over. So that's what coaching is. Every week you got a new thing you got to chip away at, and so we'll put that on the emphasis thing this week.
Well, you always mention, and all coaches mention, that the point of coaching football is to have your team play a full 4 quarters, and that's the goal in the end of the season, hopefully right away when you start the season. So, but the first half especially is fantastic, and as I mentioned, the second half, you see no points on the board. You might take that as saying, the offense didn't do what they did in the first half, but like you're saying, a couple miscues here and there allows that to happen. The defense, though, at the end stood strong, and we talk about Drew Sears and the big tackle he made on 4th and 2. They're coming down by 12. I mean, huge stop for him.
And that's one of those momentum stoppers that, you need a big play in that situation. And your big-time players step up in those situations. And, that was a key stop. I kind of felt like we were going to be able to get out of that with a win, but that solidified it to me. I mean,
right.
Because they were driving and all of a sudden they score there, and it really puts us back on our heels even more. And so that was a huge stop. And, and like I said, as a team, we're going to need each other. We talk about that all the time. Some weekends, the defense is going to step up more. The offense is going to step up more, special teams. So our defense really, gave up 13 points in the second half, but, for the most part, played a heck of a second half. While we were kind of struggling offensively there a little bit. So, number one, our kids care. I mean, they don't, they see it. They want to fix it. So, it's not like they're rolling their eyes or anything. They know that, hey, they see the same things, and I think that'll transfer to a good practice this week.
I think the thing I saw, too, from the defense especially is you guys getting to the quarterback and getting in the backfield. You guys had a handful of sacks. I mean, everybody was involved. Ooch, Dantzler, I mean, everybody was involved at some point for tackles for loss. And is that something you kind of saw, just getting to the ball more this
and
this
that
week?
helps a lot, especially in coverage. It's the ideal situation is to be able to play coverage and have 4 guys get pressure on the quarterback. And, that's kind of the defense that you always love to have.
Mm-hmm.
You want to pressure sometimes and do that. But, man, if you're able to fluster and pressure a quarterback with 4 guys and you can keep guys in coverage, that's the ideal situation. We did that a number of times. Defensive staff did a great job making a lot of adjustments where they were hitting us in areas in our pass defense, making the key adjustments to kind of close down those windows and get them to hold the ball longer, and we were able to get to them. So, really, we've got a very good front seven, and especially the rotation even of our D linemen have the ability to get there, and so it's good to see them do that.
Offensive-wise, Cade Brister, 24-34, 276, 3 touchdowns. Again, another great game for him. The guy I really want to focus on, though, is Dalton Growler, who had 97 yards on the ground, 21 rushes. A guy who stepped in, as well as Andrew Martin, with the absence of Nash Sutherland, who had his hand injury, and also Ethan Staskowicz, who had a lower body injury, was out. I mean, those guys stepped up big in the run game.
Yeah, and we've seen that all through fall camp. In fact, even Andrew and Dalton have been with us now, and they're young guys, but seeing what they've done last year and even on the scout team and even in spring and stuff, we really felt comfortable with what Dalton and Andrew can do. That gives you a little comfort knowing you've got a running back stable that's very productive and very reliable. And so, we didn't really panic going into this week because we knew that. But it's fun to see it when guys get their really first true opportunity. How hard they're running, and both of them did a great job. So it's exciting for them and their future too. But gives us even more. I guess it solidified it. We kind of saw that in scrimmages and stuff by both of them, but to see them in an actual game, kind of be able to do that, gives us a lot more comfort.
So when you see that as a coach, in the future, when you see all the backs that you have, when those two come back healthy, do you kind of maybe bring the other guys into the mix? Do you kind of put in a different formation for them, or do you just kind of say, hey, we got good depth for if anything happens again?
No, there's you kind of stay on that same rotation. It's because that's just kind of how it goes. I mean, ideally, we're even historically in my career, it seemed like we always had 3 backs, and we've always understood how long a season is. I think if you look at my track record, when we've had really good backs, I feel like sometimes we've hurt them a little bit because, we know how long, we're always playoff minded, hey, get to the championship game. And so that's a long season. And so there's times where we could be running backs, 30 times a game. And, but also, you're talking about longevity of a season. And so to have that kind of depth, so it's very common. Once we have that kind of depth, we'll get to where we, Dalton and Andrew are still seeing the field when Nash and Ethan get back. Just because, like I said, we want to win games. It stinks sometimes. You like to see these guys that you look around the country and guys that are getting a lot of yards and getting accolades, but sometimes they don't finish the season. They're just banged up.
Right. As far as depth, though, it's not just running back. I mean, you guys have depth, and that's something I've seen now. You guys coming into your third year, each year, you guys have done a great job recruiting and getting a lot of depth, on both sides of the ball. I mean, that's something that you got to be excited about. Yeah, I am.
And, there's some positions where, we're still developing that a little bit. For the most part, across our team, we're feeling a lot better. Last year, it was an example of in a couple spots where we had some injuries and it really affected us. Either guys weren't ready yet, physically or even mentally. But, to kind of have a little bit of that, having it brings a comfort. And, because ideally that's what wins you games, and that's what wins you deep in the season, and it's what wins you in the playoffs is the depth. And so that has been a priority for us.
Moving on to this week, you guys got Davenport on the road. The Panthers 2-0 so far. The game's going to be at 11 a.m. Central on Saturday, September 28th. What are some things that you've seen so far from them?
Well, I see a good football team, especially in their skill positions. I mean, it's their quarterback's seasoned. He's an older guy. He's transferred. He was a guy that was at a D1 place and had some injuries and stuff, but now he's found a home. So he's seasoned. He's and then he's got some good skill receivers around him. Very big running back. They've got a physical running back. And so I see a really solid football team. I think, they, like you said, they're 2-0. They're a young program. I mean, I know that, but it doesn't mean, what I've been impressed with is how well they've done as a young program. Moving into, and they're playing in a tough football conference. I mean, that's the one thing. Having a pretty solid record in that tough of a conference says, reminds me that they're not going to be afraid of us. They're not going to lay down for us at all. And we're not in a position to feel like people would. We got to stay humble about that. So defensively, they run around. They swarm to the ball again. They got a bunch of good-looking football players out there that are running around. So, I think our kids see that on film. We've really talked about that yesterday, I don't think our guys are taking I don't think there's anything that would make them think that it's just I told them too when we were putting our non-conference schedule together. I mean, we weren't looking at bad records.
Right.
We want to play teams. I feel like part of our goal to get to the playoffs is we got to play quality teams, and every chance we get, we've got quality teams in our conference. We got to put quality teams in our non-conference, and to keep us sharp and keep us driven. So, and then we got the road trip, and that's the other thing. Each year you kind of try. We handled the first road trip to Eastern well. As far as focus and I know we started slow, but I thought that they handled that really well. And this is another road game after 2 home games that now that's the other mental battle. How do you handle the road trip and be ready to play at noon on Saturday?
The interesting matchup I see for sure, at least on paper, is the Lions offense coming up against their defense. They've only given up 16 points in 2 games. What makes it about their defense that is allowing their opponents just not to score?
Well, I respect, because I'm a defensive-minded guy. That's always kind of been, my background. And so, I always respect defenses that run to the ball. I mean, that's what I see as an athletic defense that runs to the football. I don't really look at who they play. We're not real familiar with who they play. We've not played teams that they've played. And so, usually fans get on there and they look at, they try to say, well, this team might not be good or they're good or whatever. We just look at film and say, okay, are they sound and do they run into football?
Mm-hmm.
And I see that. And I think that's why, we've kind of reminded them, like we kind of coined last week about our week of prep is always gauged on the best team in the country, not on who we're playing. And if our mindset is to practice against the best team in the country, the teams that have won, the national championship and everything, then that's who we're preparing for. That keeps you sharp, and it shouldn't matter who you play. But I really respect their head coach has been a very successful coach in his career, so they're going to be coached well, and so it should be a good test for us Saturday.
When you guys now have a chance to even up the record of 2-2 on the road, you mentioned the longest trip, I believe, besides Eastern Washington, the longest road trip of the season. How do you keep your guys focused and, like you said, just kind of play your game and not worry about the opponent? What do you tell your guys in the locker room every week just to remind them about, it doesn't matter who you're playing?
Well, we can only give them the game plan and give them the advice on how you handle that. And that's, it's getting rest this week. It's getting, prioritizing your team as far as getting properly acclimated with hydration and getting sleep at night, because you are going to travel on Friday. It's a 7-hour trip, so we break it up pretty good, so that really shouldn't be a factor. And the other thing is, we're playing a noon game, which is a little earlier. We get up early around here a lot. We practice early in the spring, in the morning, so I don't think that's really a factor. But really, TJ, it's about, that's what we talked about last week, is trusting. Our word this year is trusting each other, trusting coaches. We have a staff full of coaches that have won a lot of football games. That's what we're trying to tell them. We have a formula for you to be successful, and even on road trips, if you do these things we tell you to do, that's not going to be a factor. And we went back to our road trip to Kearney last year. We didn't. Most of that was just the fact that we didn't handle that road trip well. We weren't ready to go on an early game. This is a new year. It's a new team. But to get where you're going, you got to know where you've been, and so we're kind of prepping them ahead of time instead of we kind of want to stop learning lessons after games and try to get ahead of some things, and so that's why we're speaking to that as well.
And you mentioned the time difference, and I'm not going to go crazy with it. This is such a cliche reporter question, but honestly, I'm curious on your side of things if it changes because of the distance you have to go from going to 2 straight night games at home to a game that's earlier. Not only is it not at 1, it's at noon, and then 11 a.m. Central, so you lose that time you're used to. You guys wake up early, you're ready to go, but as far as being ready for game time, do you think that makes any difference?
I don't know if it does. Number one, I'm a big psychological guy, so I remember we didn't even bring up the altitude at Eastern Washington. That never mentioned a word about it.
Sure.
We never talked about the time change there, and we're not really talking about the time change this week because I still always look at it like that's why we'll change our schedule a little bit about when they go to bed, just because we want to get the same amount of sleep.
Sure.
I don't know, people discuss, argue that a little bit about how when your head, the clock, but I still go back to if your body's getting the same number of hours of sleep,
should be the same.
Should be the same.
Right.
So, but I'm not a scientist, but that's kind of how I think, more psychological.
Sure. Last question I got for you from last week. A lot of positives, some negatives in the second half. What are some things that you want to see different to improve even from last week?
Yeah, our mental focus, when either we get distracted by if we're, if some guys are tired, or if a couple of refs calls, we don't like, so really we've been going back to our pillars, and one of the major pillars is the little things. Penalties hurt us again the second half last week, but so that's been our maturity growth right now is learn lessons, and then we've seemed to come and learn from those and do better the next week. So, but that's the fun part of coaching, is each week there's going to be another area that we got to work on, and you eventually hope it all just comes together. So, really it's just focus. We still have a lot of young guys on this team that haven't played a lot of college football yet. So, it's still a daily growth.
The Lions look to even up their season. As we mentioned, on Saturday they head out to Davenport University in Grand Rapids, Michigan against the Panthers. Games at noon, 11 a.m. Central, however, on Saturday, September 28th. If you can't make it out there, obviously, you can catch the game on 89.1 The Wood and 89.1thewood.com with myself, Jack Leach, and Dominic Hosher. Coach, again, congratulations on 100 career wins, and good luck this week.
Thanks, TJ. Appreciate it.